Hey beautiful people, welcome back to another episode of Astro Analysis. This week we'll be looking at the week of July 27th to August 2nd, 2020, hosted by yours truly, Shakima. Stay tuned. Hey beautiful people, it's your girl Shakima. I'm just stopping in for today's Astro Analysis live for us to be able to go ahead and chop it up, guys. I hope that you guys have been having an awesome week thus far. I know it's been quite the trip, guys. You guys can tell me all about it in the comments below. I'm literally just getting, we've got a whole setup going on back here, so I'm just getting the details for this week up. I felt so like unprofessional when I just kept, holding all my equipment in my hand and stuff. So I've now become a little bit more, profesh, if you will, with everything that's been taking place. So this week is interesting, guys. Interesting. So firstly, I can see just diving straight into it because I just want to give us as much insight as possible to see what is actually sort of transpiring for us. They're asking me to grab a different deck of cards, so I'm going to do exactly that in the space firstly for us. Looking at this week that we've got coming up, so we start the week on Monday the 27th, which is the spread that I'm going to be looking at for us, right? From the 27th right the way through to, I want to say, to the 2nd. And it's interesting because I think we have the Aquarius Full Moon on the 3rd of August, so we'll be able to look at that. In essence, we'll be able to look at that in itself as well and sort of see what's to come with that. But, for the first week, we start off the week with the moon being in its first quarter in Scorpio. Guys, we are starting, this is a week of transformation, guys. Whatever it is that we've been navigating our way through shall be transformed. It shall be transmuted. It shall be integrated into the light of love, and we shall be in a position of integrating into our healing. So by the looks of it, from what I can see, it seems like we're going to be dealing with root chakra and sacral chakra activation between Monday and Tuesday whilst the moon is in Scorpio. And I'm just going to pull up the chart for the moon in Scorpio on Monday and see what that first quarter moon is actually going to be doing for us and what are some of the, aspects that we're going to be navigating through. So when the moon's in Scorpio, we're going to be sort of taken very deeply into our feelings, bearing in mind that Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, and Pluto is, it's all about the subconscious mind. It's about the underworld. It's the god of the underworld, so it's about what's going on beneath the surface. So we're going to be taken deep into our emotions as possible. And we'll also be able to really look at what aspects of our shallow relationships or aspects of ourselves that has been engaging in relationships on a shallow level are not really serving us because they're not really allowing for us to be our authentic self, or we're kind of feeling like we're not being able to be our authentic self because the relationship is being kept on the surface and you want to take the relationship deeper. So those are some of the things that you're going to be navigating through between Monday and Tuesday, and you're going to be able to get the opportunity to be transformed as you kind of look into these parts of yourself. As you go deeper into these aspects of yourself, you'll be able to get a deeper understanding of what it is that you do want. So don't necessarily just make it about what you don't want, but also focus on what it is that you would like to have in its place. If you do sort of notice anything that is being, unfulfilling for you. What I do want to say at the minute is that we're really sort of going through just navigating through a lot of our traumas. From what I can see, we may be looking at situations where we're not necessarily successful because we're not as assertive as we need to be. So those are some of the things that we're going to be navigating through this week in general. It looks like there is a lack of the appropriate dose of healthy aggression, and those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at, so that we can learn how to be a little bit more we're able to thrive in the kind of environment that we're living in. So it's not about being aggressive in a way where you're showing up as angry, demanding, and possessive. It's about being, aggressive about what it is that you want. You don't have enough, get up and go, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that this week is going to be showing us all the ways that we haven't necessarily allowed for our willpower to be serving to us. From what I can see, it's going to be showing us, how we've compensated with just being exaggerated in a lot of our correspondence, where the effort that we're putting in isn't necessarily yielding the kind of results that we want, and we're being exaggerative in terms of how much effort we're putting in. We're like putting in like this much effort, right? And we're talking about this much amount of rewards, and it's like Spirit's like, you can't expect that when you're giving this much. Karmically, that just isn't really the way that things work here. So we're going to be forced to navigate through that, especially considering that Chiron's in retrograde. So Chiron's really going to be the element that's going to be teaching us a little bit more about healthy aggression, and really just going after what it is that we want, and keeping the consistent effort going, and keeping the movements of consistency very strong, so that we can really be clear about what it is that we're trying to manifest and why we're trying to manifest these things, so that we can really allow for ourselves to just be clear with the universe. So from what I can see, the sun is squaring up with the moon, kicking off this week for us. So it seems as though we're going to find it a little bit difficult to understand the opposite sex. We're going to probably have a little bit of communication distortion between us and the opposite sex as we're sort of dealing with this aspect. It seems as though, as well, it's going to be a little bit conflicting as well, especially between our relationships with our close family members, maybe even our parents, and sometimes our children as well. So that's just something that we need to be mindful of when the moon's sort of squaring up with the sun squaring up with the moon. Is kind of like they're both like they're like ready for a fight at any given moment, basically. So you just kind of have to be mindful of that. You don't necessarily want to engage in fights with others. It's just about finding what it is that is worth fighting for you. What I'm seeing as well is that the sun is opposing Saturn. So this aspect is really creating different groups of people, two main groups of people to be precise. The first group of people tend to give up when they're encountered with problems, because Saturn is really about the law of cause and effect. So what you sow is what you reap, and sometimes we don't want to do as much sowing, and that's what I was just talking about with the Chiron retrograde aspect, giving this much effort and expecting this much results and rewards. So yeah, it seems as though the second group of people, however, will be able to encounter the problems and get stimulated by them and perform better. And I tend to be one of those people. I actually perform a lot better under pressure. There may be certain situations that I'm emotionally attached to that actually allows for me to get very overwhelmed. So when I'm emotionally attached to the circumstances, I do get emotionally fueled and overwhelmed. So that's something to be mindful of, because it's not necessarily that you're any one group of people. It's like you can be one way in one situation for that day and find yourself being another way for another particular situation of that day. It's about identifying where your strengths lie and what aspects or areas of your life those strengths lie, and seeing how some of those some of those tools or aspects or natures or character attributes of yourself can be transferred over into other areas of your life, because it's definitely going to be interesting. You can see that the moon is actually also sort of squaring up with Saturn as well, whilst the sun is opposing Saturn. So with this kind of aspect, we're sort of going to be sort of in that place where we're feeling so much, but we're unable to express our feelings and just kind of hiding behind a mask that we're creating. It's like when you're going through so much and someone asks you, how are you doing? And you're like, I'm fine. And the universe is asking for you to break down the walls and just be very open with communicating what it is that you're really feeling. And I'm feeling like, that kind of aspect is really going to be instrumental in navigating through the sun squaring up with the moon, because it may actually help us to not get ourselves in conflicting situations or arguments with others. Because if we're kind of like in a place where we're not fine and we're saying that we are, it may just allow for like bigger situations and bigger waves to sort of come to surface. So that's something to bear in mind. If you're not okay, it's okay to not be okay sometimes, and it's okay to communicate that, and it's okay to say that that's how you feel. But you have to be effective at, just being clear about why it is that you feel the way that you do. It's not about putting your feelings on anybody else or making somebody else responsible for the way that you feel. It's about feeling how you feel, identifying why you feel the way that you feel, and focusing yet again on the variables that are within your control. What I can see as well is that the moon is opposing Uranus, and this aspect is going to sort of like bring people feeling that, they've been wronged and they need to do something about it. And not always true, guys. So with this kind of aspect where the moon is opposing Uranus, because the moon is indicative of our emotions, and Uranus is very unpredictable, and in most cases it's like when people don't necessarily meet our expectations, this is where we feel like we've been wronged because they've done something that is outside of our expectation. How dare they? I'm sorry, guys. I've gone through a process last week where I literally just observed my inner child and just identified how melodramatic she can be. So I'm literally just utilizing her skills to be a bit of a drama queen in this space, because I found it absolutely hilarious, personally speaking, just observing the way that she observes things from her lens and perspective. So I'm utilizing her strengths instead of her using it as a weakness. So forgive me if it seems like I'm being a little bit insensitive of situations. I generally just think that the universe, in most cases, God's just having a big laugh. I would say at our expense, but it's just really we don't know what the joke's about. That's kind of why we feel like it's at our expense, to be fair. What I do want to say as well, whilst the moon is opposing Uranus, it's almost like we have to be careful about this part of us that likes chaos. So if you grew up in dysfunction, chances are, with the moon opposing Uranus, you might find yourself kind of craving drama. So you might create issues where there aren't any, basically. You might find problems in people where there aren't any issues, and these are more problems within yourself or issues within yourself that you're trying to navigate through. But again, you're basically putting your issues off onto somebody else, making your issues their problems, because it's just a little bit more entertaining that way to create some drama. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of people who are engaging with this chaotic, dysfunctional aspect of themselves as well, and decide whether or not you want to engage. The choice is always yours. We do have our free will. I can see that, with this kind of aspect as well, we may sort of be in a position where we feel separated from society, which is more of a real, deep, complex separation. And it's almost like we're sort of having this predisposition to just emotional tension and emotional imbalances and just emotional liability, explosive emotions, and emotional vulnerability whilst we're navigating through the moon opposing Uranus. So we're just going to have a tendency to have just really fiery emotions that may be unpredictable, uncontainable a lot of the times, very fiery in its element. But an apology goes a long way, guys. Learn how to sit with yourself and observe yourself and be clear with yourself about what it is that is rightfully yours and what you may be palming off onto other people, man, because it seems like it's going to be one of those days where it's like, you're making me feel this and you're the problem, and it's like, I think the fact that you feel that is the actual problem. Can we speak about that? So just be mindful of that as you're navigating through the energies of Monday. Saturn is also, conjuncting Pluto, which brings a strong sense of self-control. So even though our emotions are going to be all over the place, there is, again, like I said, the opportunity for us to be able to contain our emotions and be able to compartmentalize our emotions, identifying what is us and what is somebody else's projections over into our stratosphere, and really just kind of making sure that anything that isn't necessarily rightfully ours within our orbit is basically where it needs to be, for lack of a better way of putting it, my loves. So that aspect is very, very promising, because it means that we'll be able to, really allow for our ambitions to take the focus. Our endurance will be very much charged and activated during this kind of aspect. And there'll be a really profound desire for change and transformation and just developing our personality overall. I do want to say that this aspect is great for Scorpios, especially because the moon is going to be in their sign, so they're going to be charged up by this aspect. And people with this kind of, as we're navigating through this kind of aspect, people may sort of delight in deep thoughts and intense self-reflection, which is great. So it's not a bad thing, guys. Not bad at all, starting off the week looking like that. So let's go ahead and have a little look and see, you know, what else is kind of going on with the moon transits for the week. So the moon is, you know, the moon's going to be in Scorpio for Monday and Tuesday. So this is a charge up for my Scorpio babies. You guys will be able to get root chakra and sacral chakra activation as you're navigating through that. So I'm going to pull some cards and have a look and see what is the overall guidance for us as the moon navigates through Scorpio between Monday and Tuesday. Show us, Spirit. Okay, Spirit's not playing today, guys. Let's have a little look-see. Just say yes, guys. Just say yes. Just say yes. Sorry. Just say yes, because this is a blessing trickling down from the universe, okay? The universe is giving you light. The universe is pouring light into the darker aspects of yourself. So just say yes, receive it. This is the ever unfolding rose happening for you, not to you. It is allowing for healing to take place. It is allowing for healing to be, you know, a transformative experience, and you're transmuting a lot of your darkness, guys. So try not to take anything too personal. This week I just want to put it out there straight off the bat, like, this is not a week for any surgeries. So if you do have any surgeries that have been pre-booked, do just bear in mind that there may be a prolonged period of recovery, simply because, you know, the period, well, the moon is in its waxing stages, and that's not really it's not really advisable for any surgeries during the waxing stages of the moon. So just be mindful of that, because as we navigate through Wednesday and Thursday, my loves, we are navigating through that crafty shadow of anger. We're navigating through stress, anger, compression, which is my way of saying depression, but we're being compiled and compressed onto other people's, like a compressed file, right? We're like inside the file, and like we've been, you know, how can I put it? We're kind of feeling claustrophobic under everybody else's expectations versus our own unrealistic expectations and desires as well. So it's just something to bear in mind as you're sort of navigating through this, you know, the moon in Sagittarius. I can see that the liver, hips, thighs, and sacrum are going to be charged, and whenever the liver's charged, we know that that is a case of the spirit of anger coming to surface, triggered by stress, caused by anxiety. So look at the things that are making you anxious, that is causing you to feel stressed out, that is triggering the spirit of anger to come to surface, so that you can navigate through those between Wednesday and Thursday, guys. And I'm just going to look at the chart for Wednesday so that we can have a little look and see exactly what is taking place for us. So whilst the moon is in Sagittarius as well, we are going to be sort of shifting our philosophies. It's more about, in order to feel safe, we might find that we need to have goals, and those goals or missions or philosophies kind of gives our life meaning and purpose. So with the moon in Sagittarius, we'll kind of like have a bit more of an optimistic approach to life, and we may find ourselves, you know, just kind of like getting back to that place of feeling hopeful and feeling like, even if things are, you know, troublesome, or if we find ourselves getting into trouble, we're a little bit more optimistic about it, which is nice. So pulling up the chart for Wednesday the 29th of July, because we're closing out the July chapter, guys, which has been very, very interesting. Comment down below and let me know how July has treated you so far, because it's happened so quickly, if you ask me. So interesting, on this particular day, so on Wednesday, the moon is actually the sun is trining the moon. So our emotions and feelings are in harmony with the ego and the individuality of ourselves. So it kind of contributes to us being a little bit more balanced and relaxed, and finding a real sense of inner peace, which is nice. And this aspect is also going to increase the chances of finding success and satisfaction in life a little bit better. Relationships with the opposite sex will be restored once, you know, we're sort of navigating through the sun trining the moon. So we'll start to be able to understand each other a little bit better when you're dealing with the opposite sex. The sun is opposing Saturn still, from what I can see, so that's still something that we're learning how to navigate through. You know, this is about our self-esteem, guys, when we're dealing with this kind of aspect, because when you have low self-esteem, you kind of find yourself, the moment that you're faced with a challenge, you just kind of start doubting yourself, and you're telling yourself you can't do it, and you get very pessimistic about what you're capable of because you don't yet know and identify the strengths of yourself. And I think it's just about going deeper, guys. From what I can see, just go deeper. That's like my quote for everything. Like, if you know me outside of this space, that's literally whenever I have a conversation with someone and I can see that they're on the surface, I'm like, go deeper, let me know what you find there. So go deeper and let me know what you find there. Comment down below, drop me a message and let me know how things are transpiring for you by Wednesday. What I'm seeing as well is that the sun is squaring up with Uranus. So when this aspect takes place, it's almost like it creates, you know, this individualistic ideology, which may sort of find us being very selfish and eccentric in a lot of different ways. We may find ourselves being a lot more independent, and we kind of like maybe very guarded of that independence as we're navigating through this kind of aspect. But we have to be mindful not to be too inconsiderate towards other people, and allow for ourselves to suffer from mental exhaustion because of that, because of our tendency to be inconsiderate, because of our nature to keep our walls up and push people out of the space. We kind of need to be able to be different in the way that we want to show our unique qualities or our individualities. There's a lot of people that are going to want to teach you things, that are going to want to mentor you and want to be an example to you, but they may find themselves being in a position where they haven't necessarily observed themselves enough to be able to teach you much. They're simply just regurgitating information that they've received, and they're not necessarily practicing anything that they've preached. They're not necessarily living in that place where they're fully living in embodying the things that they're preaching to you. So utilize your own discernment as we're navigating through this aspect of the sun squaring up with Uranus, because we're dealing with pretty tricky energies here. These are people with low self-esteem that is trying to feed off your self-esteem, to build their self-esteem by trying to teach you things because they feel like that's the only way that they're going to be able to build their self-esteem. And I'm not saying to shut them down, I'm simply saying just be mindful, be discerning, be observant, and be aware, okay? Because one of the things that I'm seeing is that, you know, with this kind of engagement, we may sort of struggle with accepting authorities, and we may sort of be navigating through the spirit of rebellionism, for instance, as we're navigating through that kind of aspect. So just be mindful of that. Mars is also sort of squaring up with Mercury, or Mercury is squaring up with Mars, and that kind of aspect is kind of going to give us a lot of impatience, where we might find ourselves being quarrelsome. We kind of are navigating through like strong personalities sort of colliding and crashing because of the desire to be a leader but not willing to compromise to understand what it is that your subservience may need for you to be able to lead them to the promised land. It seems as though, you know, this is like about a lot of quick thinking and being practical, but even if we're persuading others about what we feel is truth, we may show up in a very arrogant way in being able to do that. So practice humility, guys, on Wednesday. Humility is going to be very, very important. Observe, utilizing your discernment. You don't have to rise to the challenges of every single quarrel or fight that shows up. Just allow for yourself to be present in the moment to identify what it is that you're learning about that person, that reflection of you that's showing up, because the things that you're observing in somebody else are usually the shadows that you share within yourself. It may not be shadows that you engage in, but it's still very much shadows that you are, you know, it's a part of you. It's kind of shadows that you're kind of working your way out of. So just be mindful of that as you're navigating through the energies of Wednesday, because I can see that Mercury is also opposing Pluto, guys. And bearing in mind that Mercury is still in Cancer, guys. Mercury is actually going to go into Leo on the 6th of August, and whilst it's still in Cancer and it's opposing Pluto, it affects thinking in such a way where we're overly dominating with our opinions and our instincts are very domineering, and this kind of, in a lot of cases, can result in biased thinking. So just be mindful that you don't want to show up being too biased. You kind of have to be objective, because a lot of our biased perspectives is based on subjective experiences. And just be mindful as well that when we're searching for truth, we may just be convincing ourselves that our opinions are basically, we're not necessarily considering what is practical when it comes to our opinions. It's just more of us kind of trying to prove that our opinion is facts. And we just kind of need to be mindful that the intelligence that we have mustn't be used to manipulate others, but instead it must be used to educate others and influence others to be able to make their own decisions for themselves. It's not about manipulating anybody into our perspective, guys. They're on an entire journey of their own. What I can see sort of is that one of the harmonious aspects that I can see is that Saturn is sextiling Pluto as well. So this is going to give us a long-lasting effect of peacemaking attitudes, and it will also connect with other aspects that further enhances our ability to make peace and building peace on a transformational global scale. So though we may be having a lot of distortions and arguments and fights during, I guess, out there in the world on Wednesday, we may find, you know, some sort of situations where there's opportunities where peace is being restored on Earth as well. Okay, so that is what I'm seeing for Wednesday. So let's close those two charts and pull a card for, you know, what's coming up for us between Wednesday and Thursday, whilst the moon is in Sagittarius. What do you advise, Spirit? What can you see when the moon is in Sagittarius between Wednesday and Thursday of this week? Tell us what you see and what you advise for us during this transit between Wednesday and Thursday. As clearly as you can, please. Be who you are. I'm hearing, be who you are, and don't allow for that to cloud anybody else's ability to be who they are. Know that this is a experience of integration, is what I'm hearing. So the two cards that we got, guys, is play. Okay, so try not to take anything too seriously, is what we're being told. And break the chain, guys. Okay, break the chain of the ancestral patterns so that we can rewrite our future, because we're going through an awakening. Okay, we're going through an awakening between Wednesday and Thursday that is going to give us this new philosophy that we're going to be sort of, you know, inspired to create. It's really going to be giving us an opportunity to break certain patterns and heal ourselves so that we can rewrite the future for ourselves. Take a break, guys. You know, try not to take things too seriously, because what is going on is the divine plan. And if we get too wrapped up in our ego about our individuality, about our biased opinions and concepts and perspective, it's only going to create more distortion, basically, as we navigate through the process. So just be open and stay open, guys. So we're going to look at the moon's going into Capricorn on Friday, guys. The final day of the chapter of July is closing out in the moon in Capricorn, and that's beautiful, because again, it's going to give us an opportunity to deal with paternal wounds and paternal circumstances and situations, but more importantly, it's also going to give us an opportunity to really focus on our life's purpose and our status in society, and really just allow for us to activate our backbone. From what I can see, the aspects of the avatar that's being impacted is the backbone, joints, knees, skin, and hair. So we're really going to be getting a lot of downloads, I guess, because our hair is going to be influenced. So that's something to be mindful of. But overall, it seems like we're dealing with root chakra activation as we're navigating through the moon in Capricorn. So yeah, just be mindful of that, guys. Root chakra activation is really about building the foundations of self, and because we've already started off the week with the moon in Scorpio, we have lost a lot of our old identities. A lot of ego death has taken place, and we started off the week with transforming a lot of who we thought that we were, and closing out the week, we're getting the opportunity to restore based on the new concepts of who we feel that we are. I'm going to pull up the chart for Friday before I move over into the month of August, and see what's sort of taking place. And whilst the moon is actually in Capricorn, we kind of may have a strong need for being useful to society because of our life purpose. Kind of, you know, it's like this deep innate desire within us that is being, how can I put it, it's being activated, it's being charged by this moon in Capricorn. And you may look for justification in the outside world, but just know that the only person that you need to validate your purpose is yourself, because when God calls on you, only you can answer that calling. Nobody else believing in your calling is going to justify your calling. Nobody else believing in what you're capable of. If they believe it and you don't, you may still miss that opportunity. You may still miss that window that God is really sort of like, making a way for you to leap through. So just be mindful of that. One thing to sort of understand is that when the moon's in Capricorn, it's about not underestimating yourself, or about, not underestimating what you want from yourself even. So shyness may be accompanied by resentment. So you might find yourself being a little bit scared of your calling. You may find yourself being a little bit scared of whatever purpose is materializing and coming to surface on Friday. But try not to be, guys, because what I'm seeing is that you may find yourself being resentful of the fact that others may be ignoring you, because it just simply isn't your time as yet, my loves. And I can speak on this firsthand because I've experienced this a lot. My moon's actually in Capricorn, so I I go through this quite a fair bit, where my ego kind of tells itself that it needs to be getting more acknowledgement, and I have to talk it down and just tell it that, its time has already been pre-written. The astrological transits have already determined its window of how can I put it, recognition. So it just kind of has to learn how to be chilled out. Bear that in mind. There's always a window of recognition for you. It's just that God wants you to be able to be aligned with your true soul tribe, for one, but also to just prepare you for those people, because they need a certain experience of you. They need a certain vibrational experience of you. So you may be navigating through learning how to humble your ego, for instance, or learning how to give it all back to God, or just little things that you may still be working on, or God may still be working on with you, through you. So just be mindful of that. What I'm seeing is that, whilst the moon is in Capricorn, it's important to not seek approval outside of ourselves, like I said, because we might find ourselves being very bitterly disappointed because now our esteem is in the hands of somebody else, and it won't help us get rid of our doubt, and it can be very, very harmful to us. So we kind of have to learn how to trust our inner, GPS, our inner sat-nav, that is taking us into that unique destination that has been, paved for us, that path that has been paved for us. So what I'm seeing here, guys, right, the sun is trining up with Mars, which is kind of an harmonious aspect, giving us the desire to set objectives and the ability to reach our goals. It's very assertive, this kind of energy. There's a lot of competitiveness, there may be impatience and readiness, and it's all the typical manifestations of these types of aspects. So we have to identify when we're being impatient, right? When we're being competitive, when we're being assertive but slightly too aggressive at the same time. So we just have to be mindful of that. So yeah, the moon's also sort of opposing Venus, and this aspect kind of creates confusion about the real feelings and our emotional needs. So just bear in mind that it's about really identifying what problems we do have when we choose our romantic partners, and what kind of parts of ourselves are being reflected through that romantic partnership. And it seems like during this kind of aspects as well, we've got to be careful about not being very, how can I put it? It's about not competing for the attention of our romantic partner. It's about knowing that who we are, stand alone in its own, is good enough, and it's not about competing for anything. It's not about feeling invalidated by anyone else. It's about validating your own feelings and not telling yourself a story about being a victim of having to choose your partner because your partner isn't choosing you, and all of these different things. That is just a false narrative based on how your ego is perceiving the situation, based on past traumas. Maybe you're somebody that has issues with emotional neglect from your childhood, and it's been projected in your romantic partnerships. So that's something to take into consideration and observe. The moon is also squaring up with Neptune on Friday, so this aspect influences us in a very similar way, but it doesn't it doesn't affect us in exactly the same way as the moon opposing Venus. So this aspect gives the need to search for something transcendental. okay? Something that is very much transformative, that is very much ascending into a higher state of perspective. And this is often the reason, hello beautiful, this is often the reason why when we're sort of dealing with the moon squaring up with the Neptune, this is often the reason why people tend to be a bit confused and slightly chaotic with their desires, and it might be a little bit unrealistic in terms of our desires as well, because the moon is squaring up with Neptune, so our emotions are in that place where it's in sort of like this dreamlike state, right? And it's not all the way realistic, and bearing in mind that Neptune is actually currently retrograde in the sign of Pisces at the minute, which is like the sign that it's exalted in, because Neptune rules Pisces. But at the same time, Pisces tends to be very dreamlike, and with Neptune being in retrograde, we're being forced to do a lot of deep spiritual work. We're being forced to do a lot of deep spiritual, I guess, evaluation and analysis of self. So the moon squaring up with Neptune is really just asking us to go deeper. And I'm going to keep utilizing that phrase, because a lot of the times we sit on the surface and we assume that that's all that there is to a situation, and there's like cracks between the surface where spirit is asking you, go through those cracks so that you can see what is laying beneath the surface of what's going on here. It's interesting as well, because we do still have Mercury squaring up with Mars on this day, so we are going to be dealing with a lot of impatience and quarrelsome sort of aspects of people coming up to surface. It's about like strong personalities clashing and becoming very combative, and it's like everybody wants to be the leader but nobody wants to follow, you know, so we kind of just have to be very mindful of that. What I do want to say is that it's about very quick thinking and learning how to be practical in that quick thinking, because a lot of the times in our minds we're already fighting people when we're dealing with Mercury squaring up with Mars. Mentally, we're kind of telling ourselves a story about our assumptions of them. We're not allowing for them to give us a completely different narrative. We're just making assumptions, telling ourselves that the assumptions are facts, and we're not giving them an opportunity to basically show up as somebody else in our experience, because we've casted them in a certain role already. So it doesn't matter how different they show up in our experience or how much changes they may be making beneath the surface, because our assumptions have basically clouded the lens of our judgment. They are always going to be whoever we basically predetermined that they were. So just be mindful of that with that kind of aspect where Mercury is kind of squaring up with Mars. One thing that I'm seeing as well is that Mercury is also opposing Jupiter. So when we're kind of navigating through this kind of aspect, it's kind of going to affect our thinking in a way where we're kind of overly dominating in our opinions, and we have to learn how to dial it a little bit back. Because this is basically a lot of our subconscious thoughts coming to the forefront of our mind, and sometimes those opinions are just for us. You know, sometimes, and I find this a lot of the times, my guides will be communicating something to me and I'm like so quick to share because I love to share, right? And I'm assuming that other people need to know that, and the reality is they don't. That is literally just something for myself and my guides, because they're letting me know what they need for me to know, so that they can continue to do the work that they're trying to do with me as we set goals for the future. So sometimes just bear in mind, you might share it with someone as well, and it might go amiss. It might just go completely over their heads, and you're like, how do you not get it? Because it wasn't for them to get, my loves. It really wasn't. It was literally just an intimate moment between yourself and your guides, and God speaking directly to you through your guides. So just be mindful of that. What I'm also seeing with this kind of aspect as well is that we kind of need to make sure that we're not utilizing the information that we're learning as well. And I said this already, not to manipulate others, but to be able to influence others by way of example. What I'm seeing as well is that one of the other sort of aspects during Friday is that the Saturn is conjuncting Pluto, which brings a real sort of sense of control and ambition and just a lot of transformation and change. So there is going to be a lot of deep thinking. We are going to be doing a lot of deep sea diving. It seems like this week in general is about a lot of deep sea diving, because we're going through a transformational aspect of ourselves this week. So whilst you're going through your deep reflections, I'm always going to advise you guys, write stuff down. Like, you'll be surprised to see how you can look back at the things that you were writing right now, how you can look back at it 3 weeks from now and think to yourself, wow, I've actually grown in a lot of different ways that I didn't even realize, because it was happening so covertly. And by just journaling and putting certain things down and putting down a lot of your you know, reflective thoughts and the things that you're learning about yourself and have learned about yourself, and even others as well, you'll be able to really just map the trajectory of growth that may be taking place. And sometimes where you may have maybe negative things to say about someone, it may be better to write those thoughts down and then decide whether or not you want to actually communicate that, because sometimes once we've put pen to paper, it actually seems a lot less how can I put it? It seems like a little bit more petty and a lot less like it's something that needs to be done. You know, we kind of get a little bit sense of clarity in those moments. So what do you see happening when the moon is in Capricorn for us between Friday and Saturday, Spirit? Because the moon's going to be in Capricorn on Saturday as well, starting off the chapter of August. Okay, so for Friday and Saturday, guys, we've got a lot going on in the cards, so just bear with me. So Friday and Saturday, Spirit is asking us to trust our path. Spirit is saying that there's a crumbling taking place. We're having a tower moment. Things are breaking down before our very eyes, and things will continue to break down as we move forward so that we can rebuild the foundations of this new version of self that is being created. Remember on, you know, Wednesday and Thursday, we got told, try not to take anything too seriously. At the start of the week, we got told, just say yes, receive your blessings with gratitude. But by the end of the week, on Friday and Saturday, Spirit is saying that you've been training for this for lifetimes, and this is a purpose that is far beyond what you can imagine or even understand. And this is the divine plan taking place, laying the foundations of the divine plan is taking place. So just trust your path. Make sure that you take enough time to rest, reset, recharge, and refuel, and fill back up your well, because you're going to be pouring out a lot of your own sadness, a lot of your own disappointments, and when you pour that out, it's only natural that you fill your well back up. It's only natural that you fill your cup back up. And just take some time to get grounded, connect to nature, allow for your clear empathy gift that lays at the base of your root chakra to really allow for you to engage in the way that you're kind of, you know, navigating through your experiences with others, because it's definitely going to be you know, I want to say that other people are going to be testing you, but that's not true. I think you're going to be orchestrating a test for yourself to see how much you've grown. You're going to be orchestrating a test for yourself to see how much you've changed. And observing that the moon is actually still in Capricorn for a majority of Sunday, I think that this definitely still applies. You know, the reading for Friday and Saturday also definitely applies to Sunday, because the moon goes into Aquarius on Sunday at 6:11 in the evening. Pretty much just kind of preparing for the Aquarius Full Moon, I imagine, which is taking place on Monday. So yeah, it should be very, very interesting for us to be able to sort of really dive deep within ourselves this week. I can see that there's going to be a lot of root chakra activation, solar plexus activation. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves this week, guys. What I'm hearing is that, you know, the heaven that we want, we have to first be able to envisage it. We have to see it in our mind's eye. We have to feel the resonance of it within our heart chakra. We have to feel it permeating all over, tintillating our spirit at a deep level of the soul. And, you know, once we kind of have those resonance, once we kind of feel those energies resonating with the truth of who we are, then it's a little bit easier for us to navigate towards it. Then it doesn't seem so far out of reach. Then it doesn't seem so much like we're working towards something that is unattainable. Okay, what I'm hearing is love yourself and love others in the likeness that they are merely a reflection of you. The more you learn to love yourself and all the fragmented, distorted, imperfect parts of yourself, that's the more you'll be able to love others. That's how you'll be able to show them your love. And it's interesting because you may be showing a person how you love them, but their love language may be different. You know, their love language may be something completely different, so they may not be able to receive your love in a way that you're trying to communicate it. Switch it up. Try a different love language. Observe their love language, because half the times people probably don't even know what their love languages are in different situations, in different scenarios. So observe them, see what their love language is, and communicate with them on that frequency, communicate with them on that vibration, and allow for them to be able to receive you in that reflection of yourself. Because the distortion that seems to be happening with all these different aspects that we're navigating through, bearing in mind we start off the week on Monday and Tuesday where the opposite sex is really just we're not really able to understand each other for some reason, just because the sun is kind of like squaring up with the moon. we're just at that place where the opposite sex are just really seeming very, very opposite at that point. So it's just something to be mindful of. Like when you're engaging with somebody of the opposite sex, just be mindful that the sun is squaring up with the moon, and because of that, you may find yourself being in a position where the information that you're trying to give to this person is being distorted through their ego. And as you're kind of like navigating through that kind of stuff, it's important for you to kind of identify not necessarily how you can keep pushing at the situation, but more so how you can be the resolve in the situation, how you can remove your ego from wanting to engage in this kind of quarrelsome aspect, and really just kind of like disconnect. Because the thing is, if you're not engaging in the fight, there's no fight. So their ego actually gets to a place where it will probably, I'm not going to lie, like initially you'll probably find yourself in a situation where their ego is really like poking your buttons, like seeing how far they can push you to get a rise out of you. But if you don't succumb to it, guess what? That ego eventually backs down, that ego eventually stands off, and that ego eventually learns that you got the wrong one, man. Like, it's not even that kind of situation. And in most cases, when you're sort of like dealing, because we're dealing with like the opposite sex here, so if you're dealing with this in like a romantic context, I think it's important to just acknowledge to that person, you know, like, hey, the team is losing right now. The team is losing right now. You know, we're trying to do our best to make sure that the team is the winner at the end of the day. And individually, we're going to have to take some losses. That's okay. I'm okay to take a loss in this moment. Are you okay to meet me halfway and let's just agree to disagree on this particular situation? Because I'm not going to lie, guys. It's going to be a pretty transformational week. But our relationships with the opposite sex is definitely going to be one of our biggest confusing points. I don't even want to call it a challenge. I don't want to call it an obstacle. I just want to call it a point of confusion, because that's really what it is. We're confused. We're like, whoa, what is it that I did? How can I do something different in the space? What can I do differently moving forward? How can I make this better? You know, so knowing that that is the true intention, I'm just going to call it confusion, because it's all of that distortion that is confusing our true intention. So just trust your path. When all else fails, trust your path. When all else fails, tune into your heart center. Take a minute to ground yourself. Ask your heart what it is needing for you to do in those moments where your root chakra is feeling unstable. You know, where your root chakra is feeling like, this is too big of an ask for me. Because it seems like we have a lot that is unfolding this week, and Spirit's just saying, celebrate. Try to have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Try not to take it too personally. Allow for yourself to take away the things that are for you. And remember, they're even sort of taking me back to this. Whatever you learn, there's a way to be able to communicate it. Not everything that you learn is for you to share with others, because it is simply for you. Identify what is for them to know based on where they're at on their own journey, and identify what is for you to know, because your guides are helping you to be able to navigate through your experiences with these individuals, so that you can sort of, you know, show up in a way where you're navigating through the process of your relationships with the individuals that you may have to work through some of these issues with, in a way where you are aware of some of the psychological or emotional imbalances, but they may not be in a place where they're ready or willing to even receive that, not because they don't want to, but simply because they may still be living in that land of denial. And it doesn't make them bad people. This is just a coping mechanism. It really is just a coping mechanism. And what I generally just kind of like recommend is pray for their healing. Pray for them to be able to get to a place where they can let go of denial and still feel safe. They can let go of denial and still feel comfortable. They can let go of denial and still feel like who I am is good enough. This person isn't attacking my character. They're simply letting me know that I haven't been true to my character. They're simply helping me to become aware that there is more to my character than I'm caring to realize in the moments of my experiences with them. And for that, they can learn how to be grateful for the engagement that you're sort of having with them. Pray. I think prayer, we underestimate it a lot of the times, but it's one of the most powerful tools that we have for manifestation. Visualization is simply a form of prayer when we do meditation. It's more of a prayer through the third eye, the pineal gland chakra, whereas word-based prayers are more activation of the throat chakra, activation of physical words. allowing for the manifestations to come into being. So if you have to pray utilizing your words and visualize utilizing, you know, your mind's eye, do both. Whatever it's going to take to be able to navigate through, you know, the distortions that we are all trying to find our way through at this point with all these retrogrades that are taking place. But just remember, it's happening for us, not to us. Okay, my loves? I'm going to love you guys and leave it there for you guys because I've been checking the time and I know that Instagram is going to kick me out of this space pretty much any minute now. But thank you guys for just showing up and being present and yeah, just allowing for the process to unfold naturally. As per usual, my loves, I'm sending you guys nothing but love, light, and positive intentions for the journey ahead. And that is my 20-second countdown now. So I'm going to love you guys and leave it there for you guys. If you guys are watching this via my YouTube channel, definitely be sure to give me a thumbs up. Comment down below, let me know how you've been able to effectively utilize the info. And subscribe if you like my vibe and you want to be a part of the tribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Mwah. Namaste, my loves. God bless. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more.